Okay, came to Craig in 1958. So I've been in Craig over 50 years. So over half my life I've been in Craig. And when I first came to Craig, I lived over on Colorado Street, and it was not paved. It was a dirt street. And this time of year, when the snow melted, if you can think about trying to walk across the street, it was so muddy that you would lose your shoes down in the mud and have to find your shoes before you could walk on across the street. It was really muddy. Well, but now it's all paved over there. It's real nice. And then I lived, and I started teaching school. No, I had taught school in Oak Creek. Do you know where Oak Creek is? Yeah, it's over that way. And I had taught a year in Oak Creek. That was a fun year because I got to teach the music and for all the classes, and we had a music program for Christmas. That was really fun. And then I came to Craig, and I did some substituting, but mostly I just had my baby boy and took care of him and did some correspondence work. But anyway, they needed a teacher out at Lower Big Gulch. This gulch went on. So there was the Upper Big Gulch School, there was the middle school, and then there was the Lower Big Gulch School, and that's where I went to teach. Our school started either the last of February or the 1st of March. It depended on how much snow we had, because the roads were not paved out to Big Gulch, and if we were having a lot of snow that winter, we waited and started school in March. Well, I had to drive out there, and I had not driven a car before very much in my life. But I made it out there every day and to teach school. So let me tell you a little bit about that school. Usually a one-room school can maybe have 30 students in it. My school, we started with 10 one year, and one year we had 8. Our schoolroom, let's see, if we started from here and went to that wall, from this, it wasn't even that big. Our school wasn't even that big. And then we had, in the school building, we had that. And then right across the way, we had a smaller building, and that was a teacher used to live in it. So that building, they had made into a cook shack. In this little building, they brought in just a little building, a little bit bigger than that table there, a little bit bigger than that. They had a cook stove in one end of it, and a kind of long table with benches down each side. And we had a lady who drove the school bus to bring the kids, and she was also our cook. And so she would cook our lunch, and then we'd all get to sit on the benches, and we all sat down at the table like a great big family. We sat at the table, and they had the best meals. I have never had a school lunch as good as we had out there. This lady, she could cook the best meal, and the farmers out there, they would take her meat or venison or elk if they had it, and vegetables. Oh, by the way, outside our schoolyard, we had a spot for growing a garden at the school. Oh, this was everything. Well, okay, so we have the schoolhouse, and we have the cookhouse, and then next to that, we had a little shed. And that shed was made for kids who rode their horses to school. They could put their horse in that shed and keep it there while they were in school. Well, that was long ago. So now they used it to park the school bus in there if they had the school bus. Then outside of that building, we we had a little building, just a little building, about as big as 2 tables, you know, and it had one little door. There was a little moon. What do you think that building was? See, we didn't have an indoor toilet. We had to go to the outhouse, and they didn't have any running water either. So we had an outhouse on this side that was for the boys, and on the side of this little house, they had a little bin, kind of like as big as this teacher's desk, you know, kind of there. And what do you think they would put in a bin at the schoolhouse? Yes, coal. Because we had to keep our schoolroom warm with coal in our little coal stove. So besides everything, we had to choose a boy or a girl to clean out the ashes. We had a great big schoolyard, and the kids got to have their recess in that schoolyard. Our favorite one was, and remember, we had kids, I haven't told you about my kids, have I? I had one in the 2nd grade. That was Kate. I had one in the 3rd grade. That was Elizabeth. I had one in the 4th grade. That was Ralph. I had one in I had 3 girls. 3 girls in the, I can't remember, 7th grade or 8th grade. They had to be in the 7th grade. 3 big girls in 7th grade, and a big boy in 8th grade. So it wasn't just the 2nd grader, it was all these kids. So we liked to play softball. Okay, let's go in the schoolhouse a little bit. And I see here that on all these desks, these are much like the desks we have, very much. And so I would only have about 12 of these desks in the room. And we talked about the coal stove, and the kids had to do this. Well, we had our classes, and we read stories. And the nice thing about it was the older kids could read stories to the little kids. Math, definitely. The older students could help the younger students. Okay, so we had science, and we had history, and we had reading and math, spelling. You know what was so nice about spelling? If we had out loud spelling, the 1st and 2nd and 3rd graders could spell the words the 8th graders could spell because they heard them spell it all the time. It was really neat, you know. You didn't only learn what the 1st graders learned, but you learned what the 5th and 6th and 7th. One thing we did a couple times a year was to put on a play. Well, we would put on a play. Maybe there would be a play in one of our readers or something. And so one time there was a story about a king, and this king had a princess, and he had to find a suitor for the princess, a prince to marry the princess. And this was a real problem, you know, of getting a prince to come marry the princess. And we didn't have a prince. And the problem was this king, because we had 3 girls in the upper grade, we had 3 girls to be princesses, so we needed 3 suitors. And in a little school where we just had 8 students all together, this was kind of but we did it. We had the king. He was our 5th grade boy, became the king. And we had the 3 princesses, and we had the play. And when we put on the play, can you guess where we got the princes to come for the princesses? You'll never guess. From the crowd. When the crowd came to see the play, every princess went and got her father to be her prince in the play. And we solved our problem. Well, we started school in March. And we went from March We went to about the middle of December, and that was it. Okay, we didn't have a lot of holidays. Like you, we didn't have any school days off. We just went straight through every week. But in June, we had one day we got to have. That was Huck Finn Day. Because Huck Finn and Tom Sawyer like to go fishing. Well, in Craig, and we used to have a ditch that went down through Craig. We had a ditch full of water, a big ditch that went along a couple of blocks here, it went all the way out in the country about here, and that ditch was full of water. And all of the kids in town got to go out and get a pole and put a string on it and put a safety pin on it or make a hook, and then they would put fish in the ditch, and all the kids in Craig got to go out and fish in the ditch. And of course you were going to catch fish because they put a lot of fish in it. Oh, and the girls dress up like Becky Thatcher with a pretty filly dress with a pretty white underskirt, you know. And the boys all dress up like Huck Finn and Tom Sawyer. And then they have a prize for the girl who looks the best like Becky Thatcher. And they have a prize for the boy who looks like Tom Sawyer. We got to go fishing along the ditch with the Craig kids. Only that wasn't a teacher holiday. She had to take her kids and be sure they didn't fall in the ditch. We got to have the 4th of July holiday. Then we went through August and September and October and November almost, and no holidays for us. But in November we had a holiday. What was it? Thanksgiving. We had a holiday on Thanksgiving. We went to school. We had Thanksgiving on Thursday, but Friday we had to go back to school. The country schools that year was the last year for the Lower Big Oak School, because we had in Moffat County, our county, they consolidated the schools. So that meant all the little schools, all those kids had to come into town to go to school because there wasn't going to be any more country schools. That was just policy. It is the actual stove. I believe it is. It looks like it. Yeah. Okay, where's where you put your coal in there. Here's where you take the ashes out. Oh no, looks to me like they're using that for an oven. But it's really where you take the ashes out. We didn't have an oven. And if you wanted the fire to burn, you screwed this so that it was open. And if the fire was getting too hot, you screwed it up so that it was hot like that. And of course, when you took the ashes out, you'd probably get a little ashes on the floor. And see how pretty and black it is and how nice the copper is. It wasn't that pretty when I was there. And I wanted to say, our boys and girls, we didn't have somebody to come around and clean the school building. We had to take the broom and sweep the floor. And we had one of those old wooden floors, you know, where you have the long strips of wood. We had a little girl who came to visit one time from Colorado Springs. She got the broom and she swept and swept and swept the cracks on those. You couldn't believe the dust she worked out. Well, we were kind of embarrassed that she swept our floor for so long. When this pipe went up in the chimney, there was a valve that you turn on there. And so if you're cleaning out the ashes, you be sure that's open so the smoke will go up. But usually we cleaned out the ashes first thing in the morning while the stove was cold. And the ash might make a little cloud down here.